Lord Clank woke as usual and looked around, blinking. The sun shone through the dark clouds, the great city glittered in the distance, bright and fresh as new silver. Lord Clank stretched, feeling the steady roll of the watches against his spine. It was a difficult choice, but it was life. The winding key turned slowly, making a sound like a second heartbeat, a gentle reminder that he was still alive. He began to walk, smiling as the gears turned smoothly, the fields and broken trees passing like soft melodies. Sometimes they were out of sync, but all in all, he was able to continue his journey. It was still a long way from the city, but Lord Clank was not worried. He took the time to admire the sights. The high mountains, the sparkling lakes, all so clear, as if he could see them with his own eyes. In a way, the city did not seem so far away. Lord Clank smiled, and went to a tall, broad tree to lean against and watch the leaves sway and fall. To bad Lord Red would never get to enjoy such things. Perhaps Lord Clank could tell him about it, show him a small part of the many wonders. The spring key slowed down, the sound became quiet. He was very tired now, with just a little rest before he set off. Lord Clank awoke as usual, looking around. The nicotine yellow light burned away the clouds, washing everything in a misty dusk. The city was looming through squat, dark houses, with a few small gardens and thin rows of trees standing out against the mist. Lord Clank stretched, feeling the gears in his shoulders and arms click as they began to work, his central gear vibrating once before turning smoothly, the winding key now like a metronome on a march. He began to walk slowly, feeling his steps and looking at the houses, wondering why he had chosen this road, this path, this idea. The thick gears protruding from his back met the cold wind between the houses, sending a chill down his spine. A moment later, he reached the outskirts of the city. The rusty metal made Mr. Clank shiver, confused about where the sun was. Time passed like dust on the streets. Everything seemed fragile, broken, and painfully persistent. Broken silver pieces rusted and covered with cold dust. The barking of sick dogs broke the silence for a second. Mr. Clank sighed, feeling a shiver in his chest. He leaned against the ruined door frame. Mr. Red had said something, but he could not remember. Mr. Clank was worried, his memories fading. There was a tree, or silver, or something. He was so tired, his watch vibrated and jerked. Exhausted, he slid down to rest, eyes on the road. Lord Clank awoke as usual, a gasp from his lips as his eyes fluttered open. The endless walls and towers of the city loomed like the walls of a fireplace, a few broken and splintered gas lamps, the only sources of light along the shabby, rough street. Lord Clank stretched, groaning as the gears and screws refused to obey, missing several times before settling into place, his twitching, heaving arms pulling down, the piston in his chest wheezing out of sync with the movement of the winding key. He turned his head, slowly, shuddering as some of the gears were thrown out of tune, confused as to where he had gone, why he had come there. His pale, thin face and legs made him look as if he had been cold, but the screeching of the gears muffled his thoughts. He barely noticed the thin, black liquid oozing from his leg as he began his journey. Hours later, he stood still. Lord Clank felt suffocated, the endless walls seeming to shrink with every step. Lord Clank ran shakily, lost in time, certain he was late. For what? He wasn't sure. His thoughts scattered as he saw something pointed at him, its face a black hole. Lord Clank was gone, his watch ticking loudly and etched into his mind, and as he gasped for air, he failed to notice the black ooze that poured from his own mouth. He whimpered as the gears went out of tune, refusing to look back when he heard the distant clang. Lord Clank stumbled, slipping into a leaking pile of rubbish, lying there, too exhausted to move. His watch locked, carrying a silent scream. Then let go, only to lock again a moment later. Lord Clank whimpered. He wasn't sure if he was being rescued or released, feeling a dimness from the cracked road. Lord Clank woke as usual, tears streaming as his eyes slowly opened. The dusk was real, the sun blazing, boiling around the fires of trash and oil burning on the exposed plain. Lord Clank tried to scream, but no sound came out, tried to cry through his rust-scarred frame, his holes gouged out by the screech of frozen bolts and the smoke. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he could no longer feel his lower jaw, exposing dry, brittle yellow teeth in the thick air. The wall seemed an unbroken wall behind him, his path forgotten. He staggered forward, moving slowly through the slag, the burning oil pipes, and the trash. Ahead, his feet stepped on worn spikes, carved into the rusty mist. Ahead, hours later, Lord Clank lay, twitching and twitching, at the edge of the pit. The night had fallen like a slimy sheet, obscuring vision, thought, and breath in an oiled canvas. Time had passed him like ants. Lord Clank lay dead, whimpering piteously as he watched the withering sun. Was Lord Red, waiting, needing something, missing, wishing, listening? The words were like splinters, stabbing and freezing his stripped and splintered gears. Sparks hissed and swelled, his loins strained and slackened, the memory of his breath coming in gasps, groans, the pit. Lord Clank wriggled and wriggled, trying to crawl in, but his eyes were dull in a blank stare, watching the slowly undulating road. Lord Clank awoke as usual, staring blankly at the walls. There was only blackness, and he saw it too. His body hissed and groaned, like a paralyzed body, like brass balls mocking the sight of screws. The rust was like cancer, like rats eating skin, like maggots crawling over nerves, like an itch that never stopped and no hands to scratch. The passages before and behind were blocked, his eyes frozen and fixed on the holes in the ceiling. He hated his weakness, hated the disease fluid, dripping and oozing. Hated the flexibility, a hate that was beyond emotion. Hours later, he fell like a stone, numb, in a shrieking mess. Darkness defied his unfathomable eyes. Rusted metal rippled vaguely in a sea of black pus. Mr. Red, Mr. Reed. The note squealed in a monotone. He had taken. Got it, it hadn't happened. There had been silver here, there had been gold. But now there was only rusted metal. Mr. Clank raged, strained, snapped and shattered as he twisted, unleashing a helpless rage into the dirt, digging to the bottom, searching for a way out, finally, for a way. Sir Clank woke up as usual, but he no longer opened his eyes.